everyone. I guess I'll put myself up here too for just a second while we do the intro.
Oh, actually, you're not muted, but I can barely hear you.
I'll talk a little bit louder.
No, it was like I could hear you, but you were way, way off over there. So
we're just waiting for a few more people to join in before we get started.
Absolutely.
This is our lovely speaker for this session, Leah Stanley. She's going to tell us all about herself, and we're going to talk about all the different tips and things to think about when caregiving through the holidays. This is one of my favorite sessions because you kind of get in the holiday mood and really just talk about ways to make it meaningful. So it's going to be a great one. Again, we'll just wait just a couple more minutes. People slowly trickle in. We hope you all have been enjoying the session so far. This session and the next session are going to be completely live. So our presenters will be joining us. You'll be able to ask all of your questions. And the elder law session, the next session is going to be, I think, really interesting just because we have two different elder law lawyers, and they're going to touch on so many different things: Medicare, Medicaid, VA benefits, and then also important legal documents. So we're really covering a lot of things in that panel. It's going to be a good one. Getting some more people. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'll turn it over to Leah in just a minute and we can get started. I'll go ahead and remove myself now. And if you want to start talking or slowly get started or however you want to do.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. So good to be here with you today. I want to tell Darian thanks a lot for playing our hostess today and walking us all through this techno stuff that I don't know about the rest of you, but I always feel challenged about. My area of expertise is really not in the techno stuff. So I always appreciate when Darian's here to help me walk through what I need to do. I'm so glad to be here with you today. And also thank Care Partners. I think that Care Partners is an amazing organization, and I am so truly humbled, very honored to be a part of what they do bring to the table. There is so much information, so much help that is brought, and I really, really appreciate being able to be part of it. As a former caregiver, I went through the process, and there were not a lot of options for me at the time. This was back in 1997, and my grandparents, the bottom fell out, and just very suddenly, from one day to the next, suddenly I was a caregiver of two people. And I had no real resources, not like this, not where I could go listen to people who had actually done the work, who had gone through the process and survived it. And so it was really scary for me. I was 29 years old. I was a new bride. And all of a sudden, my grandparents decided to get in the car and go wandering. And days later, they showed up 2 hours from home on the side of the road with a partially wrecked car, and it was a mess. And so obviously, it was time for me to step in and do something, but I was wildly ignorant at the time, as I'm sure many of you as caregivers can probably sympathize with that, at least to some degree. It's not like it's something you train for. You don't go to school to learn to be a caregiver. You don't know what you need. And the wild abandon that I came into this thing with, it was just, what do I do? So for me, every minute of every day was like a new adventure. And for the first 6 months, I spent on a wild learning curve, and got my feet underneath me finally, had a great support system, a husband who helped me. My own parents were able to help me out. But my poor grandparents, the ones I was caring for, they were not there to help me, if you know what I mean. They were there, but they weren't there to help me. It wasn't like I could pull them aside and say, hey, what were your preferences? What would you like to have happen? Fortunately, we had conversations that, opened up the door for me to kind of have a guide, a little bit of an idea. But that was the scary part about the fact they both had dementia. My grandmother had Alzheimer's. My grandfather had an unspecified dementia. So it was just awful. And the funny thing was, for me, the real adventure started in January of 1997, but obviously that came right on the heels of the holiday that had come before it, Christmas. I called my grandmother on Christmas Day, 1996, and I told her, I said, hey, I said, Merry Christmas. I wanted to wish you happy holidays. And she said to me, sweet, what are you talking about? It's not Christmas. I was like, what? I said, yes, it is Christmas. And she said, well, there's not been anything on TV about it. And so once again, I was really aware that there was a problem, but I didn't know what the problem was. And I didn't know what to do about the problem. So again, just such ignorance on my part. And Christmas had always been a really special time for my grandparents too, because it was their wedding anniversary. They actually got married on Christmas Day in 1932. And so, you know, I'm calling to say Merry Christmas and happy anniversary. She didn't know it was any of those things. And that was hard. That was really, really tough. And that was my foray into the idea of being a caregiver at the holidays, although at the time I didn't realize that I was just about to become the caregiver. My own ignorance just had me in the dark, and I was very naive. And so I always tell people, you know, as we approach the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, they all come crammed right together, and it's a very festive time of the year, and we all look forward to it, and we're going to get together with our friends and our families, and we see these Norman Rockwell pictures of the family gathered around the fireplace and the table, and it's so wonderful, and everyone is smiling, and it makes you feel so good. Unless you are not that person, which is actually most of us. Nobody's really walking in that, but we all get the impression that everybody else is, and we're not. As caregivers, this is a super, super tough time of the year because of this idea that family is getting together, and we're all remembering our past Christmases and remembering our Thanksgiving dinners that we got together at mother's or grandmother's. And it was so wonderful. The problem is now you're taking care of mother or grandmother or spouse, and they don't remember that it's the holidays. And so now there's this gap, and they're still sitting there. You can still see them. You can hear their voice. You can talk to them sort of, but it's like it's vacant. It's like you've come to a vacant lot. They're not there where you can really engage with them. And this is so painful. So I always encourage people, when you are looking at the holidays, one of the best gifts you can give yourself is the gift of looking at things as realistically as possible. Have an acceptance of the fact that there is an issue and that they are different than they have been in the past. And it seemed like, for me, I noticed with every year that went by, they got worse and worse and worse. It never got better. And that was frustrating too. But once I was able to come to a place of acceptance and say, you know, okay, I know it's going to be this way. I know it's going to be challenging. I know they're not going to remember. That helped. It doesn't cure. It doesn't fix. It doesn't make it 100% better, but it will help. It is a good coping mechanism to work through. Just realistically coming to the table saying, okay, they're not going to necessarily know it's a holiday. So what I always tell people to do is to remember one important thing here. Your loved one may not remember the facts, but they will absolutely remember how you make them feel. So when you come to them on the holiday, if they are living in a long-term care community, like a nursing home or assisted living, or if they're living in your own home, as you approach them on the holiday, make sure that you make eye contact with them, stay engaged in the conversation with them, show interest, ask questions. Don't ask the kind of questions that are going to set them up to fail. And not that you would do that intentionally, but sometimes we do that. We just think, we get so caught up. For me, I got caught up thinking, I want this to be normal, so I'm going to ask normal questions. Well, the problem was my grandparents weren't prepared to accept what I thought was a normal question. They were, you know, experiencing the fog of dementia, and therefore they were not where they could just readily answer me. So I learned to approach them where they were. I learned that it was my task to enter their world and to get with them and get where they were. And that helped. Again, like I said, this is not a cure. I would love to look at you and say, this is going to fix everything. Well, that's not realistic. And again, we're talking about trying to look at things realistically. So what you can do if you go into the long-term care community where they are, please try to engage them. And this is tough. Honestly, we laugh about it. It's like, well, with COVID, can you actually go in? Around the country, some long-term care communities are starting to open, or at least they're opening limited. So if you are able to go in face-to-face, give them a nice gentle hug, give them a sweet pat on the knee or the hand or the shoulder, and definitely make eye contact and definitely sit with them, get close to them as close as we can in the social distancing world, and talk to them on a level that they can meet you. One of the best things that I always tell people, try to engage them by going way back in their memories. The nature of dementia is the older memories from when they were younger are going to be the last to go. The more recent information, that comes and goes, and it's in one ear and out the other. I'm being funny when I say that, but it almost seemed that way. I would say something to my grandparents, and 30 seconds later, they did not know I had said it. And that would frustrate me. So when you're talking to them, try to engage them on the level of things that you know they're going to remember. Ask them about their childhood. Ask them about a favorite Thanksgiving or a Christmas holiday, sometime that was special to them. It's always good if they've been storytellers, and my grandmother was a storyteller. My goodness, she could tell stories and she engaged you, and that's who she always was. So when she could no longer just of her own volition tell the stories, I could ask her. She could still remember because I could ask her, oh, Grandma, can you tell me about that Christmas that you did this or that, or you got this particular gift? And off she'd go. She would just need a little trigger, a little prompt from me. And that was good because now she could start telling me a story. There's something special that happens when people are communicating like that. It triggered positive things in her brain chemistry. It triggered things for me, certainly wonderful memories. And in that moment, I always felt like I was cheating Alzheimer's just a little bit, and that felt good. I'm telling you it did, because I could sit there with her, and in my mind, I could think, we're having a normal conversation. Look at her. She's telling me this story like she always did. That was always precious, and I treasured every moment of it. Some of those stories you're going to have heard a gazillion times, and you're going to think, I don't want to hear this again. Please don't tell me again. Yes, I know. Oh, I can tell the story now for you. And if you step wrong, I can correct you. That's not the point. The point is get them engaged. Let them know that you want to hear the story. Let them know that you want them to communicate what is inside of them with you. And there's something so spectacular about that. You can watch their face light up. You can hear a change in the tone of the voice even, and it is so special. And like I said, for me, it was always like we're cheating Alzheimer's. I love it. So that was something that I always tried to do. Funny enough, not just at Christmas or Thanksgiving or New Year's. I would, holidays, 4th of July, different things, Mother's Day, Father's Day, whenever it was, I would try to engage them. I would try to get them remembering, even if it had nothing to do with the holiday. Grandma, tell me about that trip you took to the Grand Canyon. Did you ever go to the Smoky Mountains, Grandma? Things like that. And that's all it took. She could go on and on about that. And it gave her the sense of her being in her normal self as well, because her normal self was to tell stories. And that was nice. That was really, really special. And I would always come away, I would feel better. It didn't fix the problem. It didn't change the fact that dementia was present, but it certainly brought joy in that moment. And it was something that I held on to, and we're talking 20 years later. So it meant a lot to me, and I hope it will to you as well. I think another thing we want to try to do in the holidays is make sure that we don't make our loved ones feel weird because they didn't remember it was the holiday. We want to make sure we don't embarrass them. And it's easy to do because, of course, it's the holidays. That's what I did to my grandma the first time when she told me, well, it's not Christmas. There's been nothing on TV. Yes, it is, Grandma. And I had to learn in time that it was best for me to tell her, to gently guide her and say, you must have missed that story, but today is Christmas. And I wanted us to have some time to talk today. And I wanted to share this holiday with you. Things like that. What you can do if you are visiting them in a long-term care community is ask them questions and see if they've noticed the Christmas tree in the lobby, or did they happen to watch, if it's Thanksgiving, did they happen to watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade? That's usually a staple in a lot of households around the country. So that's always a good place to start. And then if they didn't happen to see it, or they seem vague and unaware, that's okay. You can tell them all about the giant Snoopy float, or you can tell them all about something. And that way you're engaging with them and you're telling them something you saw. Share with them what you did. Share with them, oh, we had lunch at my husband's family's house, or we had lunch, had lunch with the kids. I went and saw the grandkids. Or if it's Christmas, oh, we went over to see, what kind of gifts the kids got and what kind of presents they had. We watched them open gifts, and that was so sweet. And little Jimmy or little, Jane said the funniest little thing, and you're engaging them, and they'll sit there and they'll nod with you and they'll take that information in. Be sure and look them in their eyes as you're telling them. And then you can ask them again, go back and say, hey, tell me about when you were a little girl. Didn't you get a this or a that for Christmas one year? And get them talking to you about that. If you happen to have your loved one in your own home, which more and more caregivers are finding ways to make that happen, which I think is fantastic, try to make sure that your home is certainly holiday ready, but also safe. Make sure that you might want to bring in for the holiday festive plates, paper plates, napkins, things like that, things that can be, safe for them to use, safe for them to enjoy. And of course, watch your Christmas tree. You want to make sure there aren't cords that are stretched across the room, because they may not see them as they are walking along from room to room. So you want to make sure you've got a safe environment, but at the same time, make sure it's festive. And I encourage you, have a present, have a gift of some kind. Sometimes with more advanced dementia patients, you can give them something they actually already have, but something they enjoy. Wrap it up, give it to them, or if you do know of something that they need that you can go and buy for them, wrap it up in a very festive package, bright colors that look very engaging and inviting. And if you will notice, from time in our lives, we love getting gifts. Everybody loves it. You watch a child's eyes brighten up from the time that they're just very, very young. So we always enjoy getting a gift. We always enjoy something special like that says, hey, you thought of me. If you need to help them unwrap it, help them unwrap it, but make it something that's very special and is going to appeal to them. And that way they are feeling more included. And there's something exciting for you too. There's a benefit for you too. As you see their face light up, it warms you, and it brings such a good feeling to you. And it helps to relieve some of the stress that you feel, because you're so grieved most of the time as you see what's actually happening to them. So I always encourage a festive environment as much as you can, and to be safe again. And one of the problems we have as we are coming through the holidays is our own emotions. It's not so much what's going on with our loved one, because for me, my experience was what was going on with grandma on Christmas or on Thanksgiving. It was the same thing that was going on with her every day. And my grandfather was the same way. It was the same thing every day. So it didn't seem to matter that it was a holiday or not. They were in the same world they were always in. For me, I had to understand that I had to do something to make that time special. I had to be the one to reach, again, into their world. But sometimes that was hard because my own emotions clouded the way, and I would frequently leave having visited with them. I would just sit in the parking lot and just cry. And I would think, oh, what's wrong with me? Look at me going all to pieces. I'm not the one sitting in there with dementia. How can this be? And I thought, oh, it's me. No, it's not. It's not the caregiver. This is a normal part of caregiving. It is a healthy thing for you to grieve, because you are experiencing a loss that is happening by inches. It's not a suddenly they're gone. It's a very slow, so slow sometimes as to not even hardly be noticeable. And many times we have caregivers who I do conferences, I do speaking engagements, I have caregivers come up to me afterwards, and they are telling me horror stories of the years and years and years that they've been providing care. So this is a heavy thing, and it takes a toll on people. You are not weak. You are not some pitiful thing that can't handle it. This is tough stuff. It's heavy, tough stuff, and you need an outlet for it. It is okay for you to cry. It is okay, because we're thinking, well, Christmas is supposed to be this joyous time, and it is. And we thank God for Christmas. We thank God for what it stands for. I do. As a Christian, I certainly embrace the birth of Jesus Christ. But we do get caught up in this situation where our loved ones are in a pitiful situation, and it is very, very hard to watch. So there is nothing wrong if you need to cry, if you need to just break down and cry. I encourage people to do that. Obviously, you don't want to live in that state, but healthy tears, cleansing tears, this is a good thing. I also encourage, see a counselor, see a therapist. Sometimes just sitting in the therapist's office and explaining to the therapist how awful the situation is actually a release. And it gets it out on the table, and it makes things more clear. It's like bringing things into the light of day, as opposed to keeping them inside, where all it's going to do is eat away at you. And this is not good. This is not good for your health. It builds your stress levels. It causes all kinds of problems. And there was actually a study. I'm currently doing research for a companion guide to go along with my book, Goodnight Sweet, A Caregiver's Long Goodbye, where I tell the story about taking care of my grandparents. My publisher has me working on a companion guide. So I'm currently up to my eyeballs in the safety chapter. And, you know, one of the things that I have researched is there was a study that was done far back as 1999 that showed that 63% of caregivers actually face the prospect of dying before the person that they're caring for. That was an astonishing number to me. I could not believe it. It was reported in the Journal of the American Medical Association. And it was, they measured several things, but that was one of the things they looked at, was the idea of people who are providing care for someone else. Because of the stress that is involved in that, it actually creates health issues for the caregiver. And some of them can actually die before the person they're caring for. And that was astonishing to me. It was tragic and shocking. So I encourage you, please, please manage your own emotions, in the sense that I want you to take care of yourself. This is such a big deal. And again, we have a tendency, I did it myself. No, the priority is this person that I'm taking care of, or in my case, I had two people, these people I'm caring for. I have to make sure they have everything. Listen, do your best, give it 100%. But you know what doing your best looks like? It means that you take healthy breaks. It means that you let someone else help you. I always say this to caregivers that I see in person, or at any point that I'm talking to them. You know how people always come up to you and they say, "Oh, is there anything I can do to help?" I always tell people, you grab onto that. If they're going to be bold enough to say, "May I help you?" then my goodness, take advantage of it. It may be something as simple as asking them, "Would you just stay in the house with my mom? You won't have to necessarily do anything, but you just stay here and make sure she stays safe while I run out and take care of this business. Maybe I just need to go to the bank." You'd be surprised what 10 to 15 minutes away can do to help bolster you, and it boosts your sense of, okay, I can do this. And so I really encourage that. If people offer to help, take advantage of that. I always encourage caregivers, look at your local church. Sometimes churches have whole ministries that are dedicated to helping seniors or helping the caregivers who are working with family members who have dementia or other cognitive decline, or for that matter, other illnesses, because unfortunately, dementia is not the only thing that brings people into a role of caregiving. There's lots of different things that put people in that position. So I really, really want to stress, take care of yourself, because do you remember when we used to all fly and we would go to the airport and we would get on planes and go places? We heard the same speech from the flight attendants every single time. You already know what I'm about to say, I'm sure. Put your own mask on first, then help someone else. If the masks have to drop out of the ceiling, put your own mask on first. This is absolutely crucial for good care. You can't take care of someone else if you are not taking care of yourself. and if you are not on your A game. So we love our loved ones and we really, really want to be there for them and we want to do the best we can. So you know what? Take care of you, make that a priority. And when you are taken care of, you're going to be able to take better care of them. Make sure you do something that you enjoy every single day. My husband and I love to read, and I will sit down and we will read books together. And that is such a pleasant time in our day. And so I always encourage people, if you are a reader, get a book you like, even if you can only give it 10 minutes at a pop, that's okay. Take a few minutes, make yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of hot tea, whatever you like, and sit down and make a little bit of time for you. Because the good news is, at some point, mother or father or grandparent or whoever, spouse, they're going to lay down and take a nap or they're going to doze off in their chair. Be ready when that happens. Be ready to reach over and grab that book that you enjoy and take advantage of the opportunity to just breathe for just a minute. So I just cannot overemphasize the importance of self-care and also the realization that you want to take care of yourself in the now. You want to be a caregiver in the now. Well, what do I mean by that? You know, a lot of us get so caught up in denial. We wind up living in the past. We say, oh, no, everything's fine. It's the way it was a year ago, 10 years ago, however long. This is not healthy. Doesn't help the person with dementia or whatever malady they have. We also don't want to be so worried that we're projecting into the future. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Be focused in the right now. What can I do right now that is going to help me be a better caregiver, that's going to help my loved one, that's going to open up the situation so that I can get the help that I need? These things are just, I can't tell you how important this is. And it all sounds, you're thinking, well, it's easy for you to say. Yeah, I guess it is. But I am speaking from my own experience. And I thank God that I had people in my life who told me, hey, you need to take a break. You need to get away. You need to let someone else, handle this for a few days while we take a break and get away go to the lake, go to the beach, go somewhere, and just get away from it for a while. That was some of the best advice I had as a caregiver, because as every one of you know, as caregivers, we don't carry the burden from 9 to 5. Now, wouldn't that be nice if all we had to do was at 5 o'clock, okay, I'm done, I'm off duty. Now, I got calls from the nursing home, from the doctors, the therapists, the nurses, the various people at all hours of the night, on weekends. There was no time. There was just no time that I was off duty. So I had to be really deliberate about that. And of course, a lot of these techniques are things not just for the holidays, but we do tend to get really, really busy at the holidays. So that's why I always incorporate this as part of talking to caregivers at the holiday time. Do what you can to make the holiday special, realize what's going on with your loved one has changed the dynamic. Sometimes just that acceptance can make things better. It's like you can breathe a sigh of relief once you can just accept, okay, I see, yeah, this is true. But this is just, my heart just goes out to the caregivers, always does. I always feel a connection. I told Darian before we started, I'm so glad to have the opportunity to do these things virtually. But it is hard because I don't get to connect with you necessarily one-on-one. And I really miss that. As a speaker, I enjoy being able to see, the connection that I'm making with my audience, and to know that people are, oh yeah, this is resonating with them. Oh, I see, you and I have a lot in common, that we're walking a similar journey. I don't want to look at you and say I have all the answers. I want to look at you and say, I want to encourage you right now in this moment, breathe. Take a moment and just breathe. And let yourself rest, let yourself relax, and don't get yourself so overcommitted in the holidays that you feel like you just can't wait till it's over. Enjoy now. Enjoy right now. And that was something that was important for me too. I actually had a counselor tell me, because I was so far projecting ahead for my, position as a caregiver. I already had my grandparents buried in the casket, and I had a counselor, Vivian, looked at me and she said, you can't do that. They're not gone. They're still here. You can still embrace them. You can still hear their voice. You can still talk to them. Keep that connection. And then when the day comes that you have to look back, as I do now, my grandparents are both gone. And frankly, for them, I'm glad, because I hated where they were. I hated what they were going through, but I missed them terribly. And have been so many years that have gone by, and so many things that have changed in my life that they have not been part of. And it has been a grief for me. But I can look back and treasure the moments I had as a caregiver. And that's what I want you to be able to do too. As hard as the job was, as ugly as it was at times, as much as I wanted to just run out of the building and never come back, I loved the time with my grandparents. I treasured it. And I look back now with no regret. And I'm so thankful to be able to do that. And I want to encourage you, this is a tough thing. It is probably one of the toughest things you're ever going to do in your life. And there are a lot of tough things in life. You know, I think about raising my kids was tough, but I go back to how I just got thrown into the deep end with my grandparents, loved them so much, wanted to do the best for them, wanted to enjoy every moment. And I did. I enjoyed every holiday until they were gone. And then past that, in fact, my grandmother passed away. Her death date is December 11th. So I lost her right in the middle of the holidays. And I hated that. But for me, I was glad to be able to see that she had a good home going. She was finally free of the Alzheimer's. And I was so, so relieved for her. But I want to encourage you that you are going to make it through this. You are going to survive this. And it will be my pleasure if I can answer questions. Darian, I know we have a Q&A planned, and I would be delighted to be able to connect with some of the caregivers and see what they've got to say. Do we have any questions?
Just plugging in my earbuds.
Caught you off guard. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're all good. I was just chatting with some of the people that were direct messaging me, and we were just chatting about just how great the conference has been so far, and just thanking you for all of your advice. So we really do appreciate that. Yeah, if anyone does have questions, we would love to hear from you. Me and Leah will chat for a few minutes while people think of their questions. But one thing that I also like to remind people is the holidays may look a little bit different, but you can still pull in those elements of the holiday cheer. Especially, we talked about this a lot the last session, but the music is a really great way to connect.
Yes.
And I feel like everyone recognizes the holiday music because it's been around for forever. So even if you can't get up all the decorations this year, or maybe you didn't get to go see the lights or something, even just listening to some music will get you in that spirit, or watching a movie or something like that, just to bring up those memories as Leah was talking about. Let's see, here's one. How do you handle pressure from family to attend a holiday event with mom despite COVID-19?
That is a tough one right now. And I say tough because we've never faced anything like this ever in my whole life. I cannot remember anything like this taking place. This is so bizarre. I had written a couple of blog posts early on during the pandemic where I was encouraging people, you know, if they're shutting down the nursing homes and the assisted living and they're saying you cannot come in. Of course, initially we had no idea how long that was going to last. So I was encouraging people, okay, let's give it a minute. Let's see if this won't take care of the problem. Well, clearly it didn't. And homes in the communities are starting to open back up a little bit at a time. But it is hard because our senior citizens appear to be in one of the more vulnerable groups. And so the most important thing, you know, you want to look at folks and say, listen, we want to take care of mother or father or grandmother or whoever it may be. We want to take care of them. We want to protect them. So we do not need a big, gigantic gathering of people. Plus, considering if grandmother or mother or our loved one has a dementia, a cognition issue, that can be overwhelming when you get them into a group with a lot of people and people that they do not remember. I mean, family members that you would think, well, of course they're going to know this person. Well, unfortunately, the nature of dementia is they might not. They might not. So I think, as I encourage caregivers, you have to remember, if you are the caregiver, you are the one who's been designated to take care of mother or father. In my case, my grandparents had given me durable power of attorney. So I had the last word over what was going to take place with them. And I actually had an occasion, had nothing to do with a holiday, but I had an occasion where I had a relative that was pushing me, why don't you move them closer to me? That way I can help you take care of them. And I had to look at her and say, no, we're not going to do that. And I was nice. I didn't get ugly, but I had to be firm. I had to put my foot down and say, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do what you're wanting to do because they're here and they're settled and this is good. So it may be that you have to remember if you're the caregiver, it's because mother or father or spouse, someone has asked you to step into that role and you have to be the one to say, do that. I always encourage people, don't burn bridges, be kind, be nice, be polite, but be firm. If you have to tell them no, the answer has to be no.
Yeah, I feel like the holidays are especially stressful for families sometimes. So you already have all of those feelings. So yeah, I think knowing your limits and knowing how and when to say no is very, very important. Exactly. I know that's something I struggle with because of course, I just want everything to be good and to be happy. And sometimes I need to care about my happiness. And it's very important for caregivers to remember that.
Exactly.
So this person says they're a caregiver for her husband, and the kids don't understand that they need to help her at the holidays because she's always been so competent, but now she needs help and it's hard to get them to understand. Her kids are older and they have their own kids, so that's family. Mm-hmm.
This is tough. Again, I cannot tell you the number of people who have talked to me and said, I am the only one. I am the sole caregiver. Certainly was. And I had two half brothers and their mother, that it was a long drawn out story. I explain it in my book, but my grandparents' biological son was their son was my biological father. And so he had remarried and it was all a big deal. Anyway, so I had these two half brothers and their mother. And yeah, they definitely wanted to put pressure on me for different things. It didn't matter what it was. They weren't hung up on the holidays per se, but they were very much looking at me like, well, are you sure that you're not just trying to make off with their money? You sure you didn't just put them in the nursing home and trying to make off with their money and do this and that? The idea was asinine to me, but these people were legitimately looking at me and they were like, they kept demanding answers of me and they kept saying, well, clearly you're up to something. Well, no, I wasn't up to anything. And I had dozens of people that I was accountable to. So no, I was not up to anything. I was taking care of my grandparents. But here were these people that were doing absolutely nothing, were not lifting a finger to help, but then were wanting to look at me and say, what are you doing with their money? So I walked down that road too. And that's why I maintain, if you have the power of attorney, if you are the person in charge, you have to be prepared to set the healthy boundaries. And, like we were just saying, one of those healthy boundaries may be that you have to say, safety dictates we can't do this. And even if there wasn't a pandemic, sometimes safety will dictate you shouldn't do this. So you have to know your loved one, you have to know the person that you're caring for, and you have to know what their limits are and know what is going to be best for them. Because, I don't mean to be funny, but seriously, look at the name of the game, caregiving. You're there to provide care for this person that you care for, that you love. So sometimes, again, it comes back to that boundary setting. And this is tough. It was not easy for me. Oh, I was horrified. I was young and I had never faced any situation like that before. But at the end of the day, I had to reach inside and pull the moxie out, to use a word from the 40s. I watch old movies, can you tell? I had to just pull out the grit and say, I'm sorry, no, we're not doing this. So, but it is tough. It really is.
Yeah, and I think another thing when it comes to trying to get the whole family on the same page, we've had several people come on and talk about how to have a productive family meeting. Mm-hmm. And that's just a really great way to get everybody's wants, needs, thoughts, and feelings out in the open, and a great chance to bring all of that up to discussion. And so you can have professionals help you with this. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of tips online. We have videos on the Care Partners website that specifically talk about family dynamics and how to have that plan and how to have and plan that family meeting and make it a productive one that really helps. So that might be something to look into or think about as well. I know it can be very challenging to get the family on the same page.
Yes. And you may not. That's the sad part. There may still be somebody that holds out and says, well, I think you're doing it wrong. Well, okay. But if the family meeting can take place and if a mediator is necessary, they do have professional mediators. You can actually go online and Google this, and it is available for you. You might try the family attorney. That is also a good place to start, because perhaps they can, you know, having drafted the original documents, perhaps they can say, okay, well, I know that, you know, her wishes were these, or her desire was this. So sometimes that can help clear the air when somebody thinks, oh, well, I really think we should do it this way. And the caregiver is trying to say, well, no, I don't think that's what mother wants, or things like that. So yeah, I think that's excellent. And you're right, Care Partners has a boatload of tips and videos from other speakers who address these very same issues. So I think that's great.
Thank you. Yeah. That's one thing that we have had questions a lot about, is how do we handle questions from families and just family, especially during time right now. So yeah. Let's see, there was another question in here. So my immobile and nonverbal 90-year-old father in his 90s, he's living at home. He is day and night reversed for the past month. Do you have any tips for that?
Oh, that has an overtone of sundowning. And the sundowning is where they're awake all night and then they'll doze throughout the day, but it's like nighttime comes and they come alive. And this is unfortunately very much an Alzheimer's thing. My grandmother did not do that, but her father did. So I lived through that when I would go visit her and she was taking care of him. Oh man, he would come alive at night, middle of the night, click that light on, start calling her name for her to come into his room and start. He wanted to talk about his money. He wanted to talk about where his clothes were. He wanted to pull subjects out of a hat. It was horrifying. And for her, she just managed it. She had no resources. I don't believe there was any medication. I don't believe a doctor was involved. She just lived with it. And let me tell you, it almost broke her in two. It was bad, bad news, because she needed help so badly. And there was nothing I could do. I was a teenager at the time. And I didn't know what to tell her. But today, we are very thankful that these physicians that we work with so closely, there are physicians who manage dementia patients. That is what they do. There are geriatricians. There are psychiatrists who specialize in gerontology, which is the study of the elderly. And that is what I recommend. Go to someone. Don't necessarily just go to the primary care. The primary care is a good place to start. But I would say, it's just like I always tell people, if you have allergies, you don't go to your osteopath, you go to an allergist. So in this case, someone that's having problems with this business of being up all night and then wanting to sleep all day, I would absolutely suggest see a gerontologist, see someone who specializes in the care of the elderly, because they can address that. And there may be some kind of therapy that they can suggest that might help. And let's put it this way, it won't hurt.
I was going to say, that's pretty much exactly what I was thinking, is asking a professional, either your primary care, but they might have better recommendations. And I think the gerontologist idea is a really great one, because they specialize it. And so they see this every day. So they would probably have some different ideas to try, things to work out. So what I like to always remember, when in doubt, always try to find a professional.
That's right.
Because there really is a lot of help out there. It's just knowing how to find it. So I had one other thought about the visiting family members during COVID. So right now we're doing it virtually. It's a great idea to maybe just tell your family members that we would love to set up some specific time to be on this cam with you so we can talk and we can see you, and maybe even have it open the whole meal while they're sitting down. You do your own meal at home.
Great idea.
There's ways to still stay connected while being safe. And it's not going to look like every holiday before. But like you said in the beginning, this is something that we've never experienced before. So exactly. I think everyone's kind of trying to have to be a little bit creative, and it is just really challenging right now. There's a couple more questions. someone says they would suggest not going to meet family members. Older populations' risk are just too high. Plan social gatherings in July, September, mix the holidays together at another time. She used a different approach and asked what family members' talents were and asked them to care them in the caregiving world. So I guess how to apply that in the caregiving world. So that's another thing too, just coming up with different games, maybe even talking games. I think talking games are really fun.
That's a good idea. That's really a good idea. I like that.
Yeah.
Came up with that. Yeah. Well, that's good.
That was a good suggestion too from the comments. This person says their husband has sundowns. She hasn't learned too much about it, but he's definitely up and alert from midnight to 6 a.m. I've had to stop working and now I'm trying to find a way to earn money from home, working flex hours so I can keep up with him. So it's definitely something that a lot of people deal with, and it's so challenging. That's why, like we were talking about, I think professionals, they really have, like, there's so many therapies and things that are just out there that I don't know about because it's not my field.
Right.
But I know that they exist because that's what they do. And so, yeah, professionals.
Exactly.
Trying to see if there's any other questions. Oh, here's another question. Her holiday problem is her husband's distrust of family members. He no longer recognizes them or really has relationships with them. They're not planning together this season because of the health, but once they turn on a family member, I guess there's no going back. He's disowned her dad and refuses to be around him due to the paranoia. Do you have any tips for handling the paranoia?
The same thing as the no kidding. And I don't mean to pass the buck. I mean, seriously, I would absolutely take that to the physician and explain, because my grandfather, he didn't have that level of paranoia, but his thing was he wanted to go home. I mean, no matter what, he meant to go home. And so he would always ask me, okay, Leah, where are my keys? I want my keys. No, where are my keys? I need my car. Come on, get my car. Clearly, I was not able to do that. He had wrecked the car already, and it was all a mess. So I kept looking for clever ways to say, we'll talk about that later, Grandpa. Yeah, not right now. Hey, what'd you have for lunch? So I did a lot of redirecting. But one of the things that happened was my grandparents we had to put them in a nursing home. There was a long story that led up to why that was the best option, but they wound up in a nursing home. And once they got in the nursing home, they were able to receive the professional care that I had no idea they even needed. And with that came some medication and came some therapy that settled a lot of that down. I won't say it fixed it. Nothing fixes, unfortunately. I would love to see the vaccine for COVID, but I would also love to see the vaccine for dementia. I mean, who wouldn't, right? So these things may not fix, but they can certainly help. And that was instrumental in getting things to settle down, because if I had just had him at home and was trying to take care of him myself, I would have been up a creek. And so I am saying to you, go to the physician, tell them what's going on, and ask them for help, because there may be medication that can help. There may be like an anti-anxiety medication, something like that. We always think about, oh, well, I don't want to do that. Listen, I didn't want to do it, but I saw that it helped my grandfather. And I thought, you know what? This was not the worst thing. I may not love the fact that this is what we're having to deal with. It's rather like we have a family member who is bipolar, and we have had to go to medications for this person, and he is better with the meds. And that's what I had to come to the conclusion of, like, if this is something that can truly help, because I fought it. I really thought, oh, no, let's don't do that. Let's try not to do that. But it turns out that it did help take the edge off of some of the things that we were seeing. And I think, anything dealing with brain health, and that's what dementia is. That's what Alzheimer's is it's a type of dementia. That's what sundowning is. It has to do with the brain and the functioning of the brain. So if there is something that can reduce the paranoia, that can calm him down, that may be able to put you in a much better position to continue caring for him and not just lose yourself in the middle of it.
Yeah, I think
It
that's
helped them
some
both. Yeah.
great advice. The only other thing I think I wanted to add was we talk a lot about the going to your primary care physician, but there's also behavioral hospitals out there that are starting to study the behavior in dementia patients.
Exactly.
So that's another professional that you could turn to. Like I said, there is a lot of resources out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a Google search it just is amazing what that will turn up. You can Google your area. We're here in the Houston area, but Houston has a gazillion suburbs. And so if you're in the Houston area, you can put in that you're looking for, a geriatrician or a geriatric psychiatrist in your particular area. Or if you're somewhere else in the country, Google for your particular area and you will be amazed what will turn up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up for me. I'm trying to see if there's any more last minute questions. Leah, if you have any last minute thoughts.
I just want to encourage caregivers, you are absolutely going to survive this. You really can survive this. There were days I did not think that I would. There were days that I thought I'm never going to make it through this. But I want to encourage you that you really can. And you're going to survive as these holidays roll around and it feels like it deals you a 1-2 punch. It's like, look, everybody else is enjoying the holiday and here we are with this. I'm telling you, utilize every tool you have. Get the photo album out, get them telling you stories, even if they're stories you've heard a million times, like I said before. Let them talk to you, let them communicate. I'm part of a group called All's Authors. My book is included with a group of more than 250 authors who have all written from various aspects of their experience with some sort of dementia. There's hundreds of different types. And one of the All's authors talks about the patient will not remember facts, but they will remember how you've made them feel. And I thought that was one of the most profound things I read when I saw that she said that. I thought that is really well said. And I appreciated that insight so much. And that's key. Understand that they are not going to remember the facts. And if it's Christmas today, then tomorrow they're not going to know that yesterday was Christmas. But they are going to have a sense that they talked with you and that they visited with you. And the next thing you know, they're telling their therapist about it, or somewhere in there, it's part of a memory that they have. And that is important. That means that you have made them feel loved and special. And that's what we want to strive for.
I think that was a great thing to leave it on, but we actually had another couple comments come in. So we'll take a look at those. And then I also had a couple last minute thoughts too. One thing to help get in the holiday spirit and to help connect with your loved one is to think of a favorite holiday meal that they had growing up. And they can even help with simple tasks while you're doing some of the main things, but they can help. And that helps get them engaged and it helps with their senses. You can smell it. You can, you're connecting with them by talking. And so I think that might be another good activity. For me, at least, baking and cooking and the smells of the holidays really gets me in the mood.
Exactly. That is a great idea. And I had read that smell will trigger memory faster than any of the other senses. And I thought that was so unusual, but I thought, no, I can see that because, when mother would bake her brownies or her chocolate cake or something, we would all be like, what is that? What is that? And you can smell that same smell years later and it will take you right back to that moment. And so I believe it. I think that is great advice, Darian, to let them get engaged in as much as they are able to. I think that's wonderful.
Thank you. So I'll take a look at this comment real quick. She says her mother hasn't been formally diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's. However, they believe she does have some. How do I have the conversation to make a doctor's appointment to get tested? There are 13 siblings and she lives along with nights overnight. She lives alone, I believe, overnight. And 2 days of care. Outside of that, we are in and out. She also says awesome presentation with some great information. She's hoping to share it with her siblings, so that's great.
This is tough. This is where I always come back to the what do the documents say? Do you have the documentation to support yourself as the caregiver? Have you been appointed and given durable power of attorney? If you have that documentation, you can certainly run it by your siblings. I think you should definitely include them in it. But if you've got people that are pulling one way and the other, at the end of the day, it comes back down to that documentation. And if you have the documentation that says you're in charge, you need to be the one to say, guys, this is what we're going to do. I'm concerned about mom. This is what I think we need to do. And go ahead and make the appointment. Do the research. Like I said, you can start with a primary care doctor, absolutely. See if they can recommend someone. If you, and I've seen this happen where people would go to a doctor and the doctor would sort of almost dismiss them and think, oh no, it's not that. It's just, don't worry about this. But they really are uncomfortable and they keep feeling, I'm really concerned here. At that point, do the research. Like I said, I sound like a broken record. Find a gerontologist, find a geriatric psychiatrist, find someone who specializes in elder care and let them do a cognitive test. My grandparents were put through what they called at that time a 20-point quiz. Basically, they're asking, do you know what day it is? Do you know who the president is? Do you know? Of course, right now it feels like none of us really seem to know these things. I think so. That may not be the best question, but that's this type of questioning that they will ask. Things that are general information, general knowledge. What state do you live in? Things like that. That's important to help them establish kind of a baseline. And when my grandparents took the test, my grandmother scored a 7 out of 20. And that was a very revealing score. It really told the story. And the doctor explained it to me. He said, if you or I took the test, he said, we'd score between an 18 and a 20. And he said, as people get older, he said, obviously, if there's cognitive decline, they're going to score lower and lower and lower. So that is still a test that's employed today, although I'm given to understand that the test now has 30 questions. So, but it comes to the same thing. Again, general information, and a gerontologist or a person who specializes in elder care is going to have the information to be able to say, hey, this is what I see, or this is what I don't see. A lot of times, my goodness, take them to have them tested just to rule something out. Lots of times people can be having cognition issues because of a medication, something that there's absolutely nothing wrong with their mind. They do not have dementia, but perhaps there is a medication that they have recently started taking, or maybe they've taken it over time and something is built up. That's something else you might want to discuss with a doctor. What medications is my loved one taking, and could this be affecting their cognition? If a medication can make you drowsy, if it can cause this, that, and the other kind of side effect, it is not uncommon to see that medications can actually cause what appear to be cognition issues. And when they take them off the medicine or change, perhaps it's like a medication for some health issue that they really need to have, change the medication, and maybe that problem will take care of itself. It's worth looking into for sure, but definitely talk to your doctor. I encourage that strongly.
Yes, definitely. We had the presentation, I think before this was the one about medication. And the presenter, they're from Iowa Primary Care. So they are primary care physicians. And I believe that they specialize in older adults, aging adults, and people who are on Medicare. So they are very, very knowledgeable. And as I was saying in that last session, they are very different in their approach to care. They're very, very person-centered and patient-centered. And like I was saying too, their facilities don't even really feel like doctor's offices. It's very warm, very welcoming, and they really truly want to walk alongside with you in that journey. So that might be something that you might be interested in looking into. We just partner with them, and they're a great resource. There's a couple more things. We'll try and wrap it up soon, but there's a lot of comments coming in. I love it. Someone says, the trick is convincing him to go to these doctors. When my husband doesn't believe he has any problems, took him to the neurologist by telling him that they would be checking his arteries. Received 2 memory improvement drugs. My research shows these meds have bad side effects, but I'll try them after a little more research. She says she's going to join the Common Ground group so I can get feedback from other caregivers. Thanks for all the input. We're so glad that you're finding these resources and trying to make these connections. That's exactly what we want to do with this conference. So we're so glad that you are finding some helpful things today. Someone says it's your aura and tone that have more of an impact than your words. And I think that's very important too with
I agree.
Memory care.
The look on your face and what you project. Exactly right. I think that's right.
This person says they called ahead before her husband's annual physical and asked for help. They did the mini cognition test, then referred him to a neurologist to get the full test. He scored a 9. So it sounds very similar to your situation.
Right.
And I think that's another thing that we keep seeing these people talking about their situations. I love seeing that because, again, it shows that so many people are going through what you're going through and you're not alone. Thank you for answering all these questions. That's great. Someone else says, I recommend asking your doctor for the Exelon patch and or Namenda, I want to say that correct, Namenda. They both made a big difference in her husband's cognition. So that's a thing too. Like, one of the things they talk about on Common Ground is these different medications and different treatments that their loved ones are going through and just kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. So I love to see that in the chat, everyone.
Exactly.
Just reading. All right, yeah, it's just some more thank yous and some more ideas for a topic. So that's great. And I guess my last thoughts, and then we will wrap this up. We really appreciate you all for being here. I just wanted to remind everyone that you can still have fun during the holidays, even if things are stressful and hard. And like I said earlier, I think it's really the little things. If you can find one little thing and put you in that spirit, then you did a great job.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So thank you all so much. Thank you so much, Leah, for being here. As always, we really appreciate you. We do have the final session, and it's going to be about all of these important legal documents. So if you have questions about that, we're going to have 2 elder law attorneys. They're going to do a quick presentation each, and then we're going to leave up at least half an hour open for everyone to ask their questions. So that's going to be a really, really helpful, insightful session, I think. And so we hope to see you there. All right, everyone. Thank you all so much, and we'll hopefully see you soon.
Thank you, Darian. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Leah. Bye, everyone.